Hello.
Hey guys.
Welcome
Hello.
to Stoutzilla Live. That was a really cool intro.
Really cool. I'm all fired up now.
I know, absolutely ready for it. Thanks to everyone who's tuned in. Just a few quick introductions and a little bit of housekeeping. We'll get right into it. So, my name's Matt. I am the sales and marketing ambassador at Umbard. Yeah, very excited to be hosting this alongside the amazing Emma Inch. Hi, Emma.
Hello. Hi. Should
How
I
you
say
doing? You
something
right?
about myself? Do you want me to say something?
Yeah, absolutely. Introduce yourself.
Well, I'm quite happy to leave it at the amazing Emma. I've never been described as that before. So yeah, I'm Emma Inch. I'm a beer writer. I live in Brighton. Massive fan of Umbard. I've known Jordan since the brewing in a shed days. So yeah, really pleased to be here.
Amazing. Thanks so much for joining us. Obviously not forgetting Brett. We've got Brett here. He's our marketing manager, who's going to be moderating, kind of answering your questions and things like that. Hi, Brett.
Hey guys. How we doing?
You doing all right? You ready for this?
Yeah. All ready, yeah. No technical glitches so far, so fingers crossed.
That's always the thing with live streams, isn't it? There's always something that might go wrong, but I think we're doing all right so far.
That's a bit of entertainment to it.
Yeah, so just a tiny bit of housekeeping before we get the main man on himself. So feel free to ask questions. Brett will be posing those questions to whoever might need to ask them. So we'll definitely address those. We'll obviously be tasting on the beer, so any kind of feedback and things like that. So do 100% get involved. We would love to see that. Should we get him on? Should we get Jordan on?
Let's get him in.
I think we should.
Hey.
Hi.
How you doing, mate? You all right?
I'm great. How you guys doing? You've done a wonderful job here.
Thanks. Yeah. No, we're excited to drink Stoutzilla and talk about it.
And I'm still pumped from that intro. It's so hard to come in from that energy. You go, need smoke machines and lights flashing.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, it kind of gets you all energetic, and then we're sitting here in seats. But I just kind of want to go and run a marathon or something like that.
Shouldn't we be sort of like this with little silk dressing gowns on or something?
Sparring.
Yeah.
Jordan, for those who don't know you, do you want to introduce yourself and I guess introduce Umbard for anyone who might be a first time, maybe Stoutzilla was the first beer they ever had just, in the last few weeks. Just introduce yourself and the brewery.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Jordan Mower. I'm the head brewer and founder of Umbard, managing director, scrub the floors and do whatever needs to be done, guy. Umbard did start in a shed in Brighton, in Hove, technically, actually. And yeah, it was one of the very first beers that really tried to challenge as a home brewer when there weren't many imperial stouts even about. And I think it was actually Dark Star that was quite inspiring, that brought out this imperial stout, a Russian imperial stout in bottle in winter, and it's like, wow, what is this? There weren't many about at the time, so I got very excited, and how far can I push the concept of indulgence and luxury? And I've got one of those original bottles. Well, say one. I've got a collection of those original bottles, so I can't find a picture because something happened with Apple, and I can't find anything that happened in 2016. But I've got a picture of my wife pregnant, hand bottling the first Stoutzilla bottles. Not to know that one day going to own a brewery and this is going to become a successful beer. But yeah, I've got some of those bottles so that Jago, my first son, when he's 18, can open a bottle that was brewed just before he was born. So we have an 18-year-old imperial stout. So yeah, there's a lot of love for me for this beer, and from home brewing it to thinking one day we would come this far. It's been an incredible journey. So yeah, Umbard. Should I tell a bit more about Umbard as a whole, or specifically?
Yeah.
So from starting at that point in the shed, I'm born and bred in Brighton, and there's always been a huge love for creativity, challenging everything and anything, and seeing what can happen. So that has always been sort of the source and the love of what Umbard is. The dream of being able to have a tap room in town that could reflect every range and style of beer and not beholden to just three styles, which when I started, there were so many breweries that were, you do an IPA, you do a pale, and you do a dark beer, to be able to, you know, really express and learn and grow and work with other breweries and collaborate, to express what could be done as, you know, a continental style, a Belgian style, and how now we have what we call an Umbard twist on many things. And I feel we've grown a style and a palette. You know, there's a lot of people that would say this is definitely an Umbard style beer. So we got the brewery 3 years ago. In between that, I got qualified as a brewer at the Institute of Brewing and Distilling. I've been a head brewer at 2 different breweries since then. Brewed hundreds of beers for other breweries, including quite a few local that are now successful commercial breweries, including, which I can say it now because my NDA is over, even Goose Island, which helps brew the Golden Goose that came to England as well. So a long brewing history before managing to get our site, and then 6 months later COVID hit. So it's been it's been an interesting journey, but embracing what we love and what a lot of our fans and supporters do. Stoutzilla really represents just one aspect of what's brilliant of what we do as a team. So yeah, really amazing. I'm very proud and fortunate to have. I mean, you'll see come on, you know, Paul, who's known me from before I even really drank much beer, and was drinking just to get drunk, to working with great animators and forming great friendships with all 3 of you here over the time. And yeah, sometimes doesn't feel like work. So very fortunate.
Amazing. Thanks for that. I think, yeah, good little insight into you know, the past. We'll delve into Stoutzilla. Well, actually, let's do that now, shall we? So, if everyone wants to grab, I mean, we're all going to be drinking it. If you're drinking along, grab your can. We're going to welcome John on. Let's get him on.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello, John. How you doing, mate? You good?
I'm all right, thanks. Yeah. You lot?
Yeah.
Good,
Brilliant.
thank you.
Do you just want to introduce yourself, mate? Just so
Yeah, sure.
know.
So I'm John. I work at Brew York. I've been a avid follower of Stoutzilla, and yeah, it's just one of my go-to beers that I look forward to every year.
Happy days. Yeah, that'll do. That'll do. Shall we let's crack it open then? I think, Jordan, you might have beaten us to it already.
I'm sorry.
No judgment. Absolutely no judgment from me.
Cheers, everyone.
Cheers.
Cheers. What's Emma? Do you want to kick us off? What's your initial reaction to this beer?
So, one of love, obviously. The overwhelming aroma. There's lots of vanilla on, isn't there? This Madagascan vanilla. There's lots of that, which I love that aroma. But what I've always liked about Stoutzilla is that you get that kind of vanilla aroma, and sometimes with a beer that smells has those kind of aromas, you worry it's going to be just sort of sickly sweet, and Stoutzilla isn't. It's certainly not that. It has that sweetness from the malt and the kind of vanillin, but it also has the smokiness and the bitterness and the roundedness and the structure to kind of carry that off, which is something I've always loved about it. And it's it just pours incredibly well. You know, the lovely creamy off-white head, the blacker than black, as my heart kind of color. It's it's just gorgeous, lovely mouthfeel, but incredibly drinkable. Drinks well, much easier than its 10%. I mean, that is, you know, that's a dangerous beer, isn't it?
One of the things that one of the things we try to achieve with every beer. So this isn't technical, but no matter what ABV it is, we have to work towards the title sessionability. And I know sessionability should be an ABV, but in terms of drinkability, you should, no matter how big any of our beers are, and I think the cold IPA we did back in January was one of the lethal, dangerous beers we've ever made, because everyone was drinking it like a 4 or 5% beer. I think it was 8.2%.
Yeah.
We really do try and do that. So it's a lot of a balancing act, which we're really proud to try and achieve. But hopefully this doesn't feel like a big over heavy, over alcoholic and fusily. We're trying to dial down all those fuels, so you just get the balance of flavour, and when you finish that sip, hopefully you can smash another one down.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Which isn't fair on our tap room either, because they've had a few casualties to that as well.
John, would you reckon? I mean, I think, you know, as I understand it, you're a man that's had a fair few Stoutzillas over the years. You know,
Brew York do make some exceptional big beers.
Yeah, it's nice because it's not. It's really well balanced, and you get everything from the malt to the vanilla, but you get it all almost in stages. And it's not in a, like you were saying before, Emma, it's not a sickly taste. Like some stouts can be so oversweet to the point where it might be a big hitter, but you can only maybe have a couple of mouthfuls before you're kind of wishing that you hadn't got a pint of it. But it's but with this, it's kind of like it keeps building and building. It's almost the more it's sort of like you're holding it in your hand, the better the taste and the flavors that are coming out of it. But that's just a nice reminder, because every year it's one of those where that's what I'm looking forward to. And like, you know, I've had a few of these now over the last week. It's nice for the winter warmers.
Brett, what about you, mate? I mean, you know, I've probably had a fair few.
Yeah, for me. I don't have a massive sweet tooth, as some of you know. So like, and often when you, like Emma says, you get a beer with that heavy vanilla aroma at first, is always a bit of a worry that it could be really sickly sweet, or just too kind of on the too sweet side. Whereas this, I think the coffee plays a big part in it as well. Like, you've got all the nice roasted fruity coffee notes coming through, and we use locally roasted coffee in ours, which is great because we get to kind of select it. So me and Jordan actually went down, we were able to like select. We did a cupping, which we both came back after about 20 cups of coffee, like buzzing. I don't think I've ever drunk so much.
Can you explain what a cupping is to me?
Cupping, if you don't know, is where you basically buy small amounts of different coffee blends, so you can kind of see which one you kind of want to use. So we did that, and I think there was probably like 10 different coffees we tried. I
was absolutely off my face on caffeine. Yeah, absolutely shaking with caffeine. It was hard to adjust because you have to hold that spoon and you really have to lip slurp smack it. So it's almost what you taught as a kid that would be really like that. And it's like, no, you have to really suck it through, like coffee, you know, learning another brew. Very cool. Yeah. And that was with the Milk Shed, wasn't it, in Brighton?
Yeah. Great guys. We've used them for like other beers as well. So yeah, we work with those guys quite a lot. But yeah, like the rest of you said, for me, it's just a very well balanced beer. And you know, I love the barrel aged version as well. I actually had my last bottle of that, I think, a couple of weeks ago, and it was still tasting great from last year, which was lovely.
There's some kind of blackcurrant kind of stuff going on in here as well. Is that Is that the hops or is that the coffee? Do you think? Is that,
That's crazy, amazing. Yeah, that's so we use Bramling Cross, the English hop.
Yeah, good hop. Yeah,
beautiful hop. Love that in the dark beers, especially. Longback, our robust porter as well, also has that. And a few people said there's a black currency note in it. Yeah, that's the Bramling Cross. That
is lovely, and goes really well with that coffee smokiness. The kind of it's got it all, and you know, you say on the tin, it's layered, and like John was saying, it does feel like layers. You get the different elements of it at different times that kind of as it runs across your tongue, kind of thing. It's a very clever beer, and incredibly clever for hiding its ABV. You certainly wouldn't know that. The Kentucky stout. Kentucky bourbon, the bourbon whiskey. How do you add that? How does that end up in there?
So we do a small pour, a small blending with Buffalo Trace for the canned version. So we have certain rules with HMRC in the UK of being considered a beer. So it has to be a really low percentage to be able to use another spirit. But the story of the canned and keg version of Stoutzilla, and it always has been to create the illusion of barrel aging and having that thick indulgence. And I think this year is the thickest, biggest mouthful we've ever achieved. If you taste this next to the actual barrel aged version, I'd love to hear your feedback and see what you think on that as well. I think we've created so much unctuous indulgence with this as a canned product, which is really hard to achieve, and that's many years of really dialing it in. And then we have the barrel aged version, which for the first time we did last year. So this is only our second year being able to do barrels because we've only just about got the space. I say I got the space, we stole it from the tap room and put a load of Buffalo Trace barrels. So they're first wet, meaning no other product's been in there. They literally came soaking wet with Buffalo Trace still floating in the bottom of the barrels there. And then the vanilla you get from the barrel aged version is just coming from the wood. So American oak has that vanillin. We've added no vanilla to that. And it's quite impressive because the vanilla is nearly as strong as it is in here. And this has been aged on, like you say, the Madagascan bourbon vanilla. So being specifically with that vanilla, you get the crossover with the bourbon character. We've tried so many different vanillas, and it has to be specifically Madagascan bourbon vanilla to work with this beer. In our pastry sours, we'll tend to use different vanillas that give more of that confectionery note. But this works really well with this. It's almost, if you taste it neat, it's almost like a leathery note and a sweetness that it adds with that bourbon character from that one vanilla.
Wow. So the recipe, I didn't realize the recipes are quite different then for the can and the barrel aged.
It is, yeah. So we have the same ratios in terms of malt, and we use the same coffee. But the vanillin comes from the barrel, and with the barrels, because they need to go through a voyage as such, a long journey. We do about 6 months now. That beer needs to have even more residual sugar, so we mash an extra time. So we're mashing 4 times to achieve that one brew. And we're pulling off just those first sugars from each mash. So you've got even more of a thicker, full-bodied beer because it needs to have that longer journey in the barrels. And then with the barrel aged version, the only thing we're actually blending back with at the end is the coffee, because the cocoa nibs are in the mash. You've got the chocolate there.
Yeah.
You've got the vanillin from the wood. You've got the bourbon from the wood as well. That's soaked in, and the residual bourbon in those barrels. Whereas the canned version, these are all high notes that we have to blend at the end and really dial in specifically to that beer. So we'll get everyone around, and it's been it's been a struggle. It's like putting everyone out the office is like, okay, 8 o'clock in the morning, we start drinking imperial stouts. Is this too much coffee? Is this not enough? And then sometimes we'll need a break. And I will give credit to them. Go down Greg's, get some sausage rolls, have a break, come back and reevaluate it.
And how different is this to the beer you've got a photograph of your wife bottling? How
yes,
different? How's that
I
changed?
opened the bottle for the first time when we launched it in the tap room. Was it 2 or 3 weeks ago? I opened one of those original bottles, and I haven't opened any of them since then, just to see how it traveled. Amazingly, it wasn't oxidized, because bear in mind I'm filling this in a shed and hand capping them. It wasn't oxidized at all. It had this lovely milk chocolatey note all the way through it, and there's no lactose. We won't use lactose in it. And it had some of these bourbony notes, but the mouthfeel, and if you think like 7 years ago, what we considered to be a full mouthful, and you look at some of the mash temperatures we were using back then, we're like 64, maybe 66 was a bit mad if you're trying to get a big full mouthful, and now we're doing like 73 degrees. And we're adding even more oats to that beer, and only pulling off the very top of that mash. So the one thing in comparison was the mouthfeel was far thinner than I thought it was, and at the time I was like, oh my god, this is crazy. Look how we've used loads of oats in this. How exciting! So amazing how our palates change, and how our thoughts change on what's a full-bodied mouthfeel on a beer. But also the water treatment, I could taste the difference in the water treatment. I'm a bit of a sad geek when it comes to water chemistry, but now we're very high on the chlorides and pretty much nothing else, just to really help that silky smooth mouthfeel. But yeah, no, I was very happy that it's not oxidized, because like I say, I'm trying to hold it out for Jago for his 18th, and hopefully there's a beer that's not oxidized and tasting like absolute crap.
Emma, tell us a little bit about you were involved in a book, and you included Stoutzilla in this book, so tell us a little bit about that book and kind of I guess why you
have one
handy.
So so together with 7 other beer writers, so Pete Brown, Claire Bullen, Johnny Garrett, John Holl, Lottie Poplow, Roger Protz, and Joe Stange, we were invited by Camera to choose our world's greatest beers. There's 250 beers in there, 250 ales and lagers from Pilsen to Portland, and this was launched in the beginning of August this year. So yeah, I had the opportunity to choose my favorite beers, and Stoutzilla found its way in there. It was a funny process actually, because for 250 divided by 8, I think works out as 31 beers each or something like that. Obviously at the beginning there was a bit of horse trading with, well, I want to include such and such, and well, you can have that one if I can have this one then, and there's a little bit of that kind of horse trading, because the book is actually organized into chapters depending on the beer writer, which wasn't what we didn't know that was going to happen to start with, but it was kind of this iterative process that really made sense in the end, to kind of get people's kind of gathering of which beers that they really liked. And I chose beers which I say in the book, beer to me, and I'm sure people who have committed to watching a YouTube live feed on a Wednesday night, but beer is more than just what's in the glass. It's the connections that we make with the people that we drink it with, or the memories that we have of where we've drunk it, or the people who've made it, or the conversations we've had about it, and what it reminds us of. And so it was all those kind of connections that were kind of going around my head when I was choosing beers. also kind of wanting people to be able to pick up this book and find the beers as well to some extent. You know, you want them to have a bit of a challenge. So Stoutzilla is a nice challenge because it only comes out once a year, and you've got to be quick to get your hands on it. So it's nice to have challenges in there for people, but also, you know, you don't want to recommend some beer had up some mountain somewhere from some brewery that only, you know, serves on a tap, you know, once every 3 years or something. You've got to allow people to have a crack at it, really. So yeah, Stoutzilla just really jumped out to me, really, as a beer that has a lot of connections with me. For me, as I said, first off, I've known Jordan for a few years. When I was doing a radio show in Brighton, fermentation radio on Radio Reverb in Brighton. I think Jordan was the guest that was interviewed the most during the period of that radio show, because he's good mileage. You know, he's good to talk to. Fantastic beer. I think, you know, the time I was interviewing for the 5th time, I thought, well, you know, maybe, you know. But I remember we also brewed a beer in your little shed down the end of your garden once, didn't we?
We did.
We brewed one of the first New England IPAs that I'd ever been involved in, and that was really good. So there's lots of memories of you know, kind of the person who made it, but also, you know, I've been in Brighton 30 years next year, and you know, I think it would be very hard to leave, because Brighton's a bit like that. It's a bit kind of seductive. Once you're here, it doesn't kind of let you leave. And I think the whole thing about you know, we'll talk about obviously the label and the branding in a bit, but the whole thing about Stoutzilla being made of Brighton and being, you know, so rooted in Brighton just really resonated with me. And you know, this beer that only comes out once a year, this beer that's as you say, kind of unctuous and luxurious, but also drinkable, and actually it's got a bit of an edge to it. It's not a you know, it's not a lactose filled pudding by any means, and nor is Brighton, and nor are people who live in Brighton. It's, you know, we may look a bit like that from the outside, but we're blooming not, you know. And there's something about that really kind of struck home with me, I think. I mean, stouts in the book, stouts and porters were over a third of my choices. But I think when you've got something like this, you know, you've got to include it, really, and also wanting to tell the world about it, really. You know, I think Umbard can be a bit of a, you know, your local brewery can be a bit of a well-kept secret, and it shouldn't be. You know, something like this shouldn't be a well-kept secret. You know, it should be up there with the, you know, the best beers. I can read you the last paragraph of what I wrote about it, actually, which kind of sums up what I mean about the whole Brighton thing.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll just read you the last bit. So Stoutzilla's recipe combines roasted malts with cocoa nibs, Madagascar vanilla, Kentucky bourbon, and locally roasted cold steep coffee. The result is a beer that perfectly captures the city of its birth, all the late nights and dirty weekends, nonconformists and creatives, the brash, the artistic, and the bizarre. It mixes last night's cigarillos with this morning's bright sunshine, pulling in the savoury sea spray and the smooth sweetness of a stick of rock. As the brewery's strapline goes, this is a beer that is not only made in the city, Stoutzilla is unmistakably made of Brighton. And yeah, I think that's what I kind of, that's what I love about that beer. It's a cracking beer, Jordan. You've done a good one yet again.
I mean, incredible wordsmith. I mean, yeah, to be in the guild of beer writers, well deserved. How do you write so well? And that is incredible accolade. So thank you so much, Emma. Wonderful.
Oh, you're very welcome. I didn't pick, you know, I wouldn't pick things just for the sake of it. You know,
I know you wouldn't.
It's a great beer, you know, and it's got integrity and you know, I'd like everyone to try it. I think it's fantastic, you know.
Amazing.
Well, we've even converted to lager drinkers as well. Interestingly, a lot of our friends from Fata Mano came over, which said they like lager, and said, "Well, try this." They came over on the launch night, and by the end of it, they drank about 2 pints in thirds of Stoutzilla, and they said it doesn't give you a hangover. So that's their claim.
There you go. Don't write that on the can.
No.
And just quickly on that note, just before, so we're just going to invite a couple of more guests on. We're just going to say goodbye to John. But you mentioned your first memory of Stoutzilla. Just before we say goodbye to you, John, and thanks for joining. What was your first memory of Stoutzilla? Do you remember that first sip?
It wasn't the first sip as such. It was when I actually met Jordan. We were both doing a beer festival at Aura, and he was telling me about this stout that he was making, and he had this idea for putting a creamer into a T-Rex statue and making it come out of its mouth. And I was just like thinking, who is this person? Why is he thinking like this? And, that kind of made me think, I really need to see what's going on. And from there, that was it. Hooked.
That T-Rex still exists. I spent a long time looking for it. A couple of weeks back, we found it like buried at the top of the tap room storage area, but it's still there. Jordan's got his profile picture on WhatsApp still.
That is still my profile picture.
No, I remember because we were kind of tit for tatting with different trying each other's beers and things, and Waters was there, the legend that's Andy Waters. Just kind of, he's been everywhere, and we were just kind of picking through them and trying each other's beers on that day, and it was just a good day.
Yeah, it was great. Absolutely great. I remember that now. And we filled the I can't remember what they're called, like a soda, cocktail bottle with nitrogen, and we did different syrups and Exganthum, what's that foam thickener, that natural foam thickener, gum. Yeah, that's the one. And so when you poured the drink, then you could have this spray on the top. And my poor Jago again ripped his T-Rex toy and sat it over the top of it and sprayed it all black, so it looked like Stoutzilla is firing out of his mouth this foam on top of the glasses. As much fun and theatre as possible, and I met you guys. You were in the vault, and you were using the slushy machines.
Yeah,
so Lemon Le Bon.
Simon Le Bon, we did, and then I created before I met the guys from Brew York. Before I joined them, I used to make cocktails, but I called them hoptails. And I used to make Imperial White Russians using stouts. So we started chucking those in slushy machines as well. And I got one 5-star on Untapped for that. And then it got removed because it wasn't a beer.
Oh, come on.
Yeah.
The harsh world. It's harsh world.
It is. Yeah. Untapped is unforgiving. It's an unforgiving world, Untapped. Well, thanks very much for joining us, John, and kind of telling us about your memories and stuff like that. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much for having me.
We'll see you in February.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you very much.
Cheers, John.
Cheers.
Nice job.
Have a good Christmas, everyone.
And
you too, mate.
And so John goes, and then we gain another 2.
Doubling the numbers. Here we go. There's Paul.
Here we go.
There's Luke.
Cheers.
Cheers, guys. How we doing? Paul, you can introduce yourself first and probably tell us why you're not drinking a 10% stout.
Hi, yes. Hi, I'm Paul Jackson. I'm very good friends with Mr. Jordan here, who we call Steen, but that's for another time. But I'm the guy who did the art for the Stoutzilla, the amazing Stoutzilla, I should say. And the reason I don't have a beer is because I'm in Toronto, as you can probably notice from the sunshine. I'm 5 hours behind, and my beers are on an aeroplane, I think. So, hopefully the pilot's not drinking them, because that'd be a disaster at 10%. I was lucky enough to be asked by Jordan to create the art for Stoutzilla.
Amazing. And Luke, did you want to just introduce yourself?
Oh, Luke's frozen.
Oh, we've lost Luke.
Oh no.
There had to be some technical upset.
There's bound to be one. While Brett works his technical magic, Oh, is he back?
There he is.
He's back.
Hey,
Hey, Luke,
Hello.
how you doing? You're back.
Sorry, lost you there.
No, no worries. Did
First
you just want to just
thing.
introduce yourself, Luke?
Oh yeah, hi, I'm Luke. I'm a motion designer in Brighton. So I did the animation that was the beginning of this video, and been doing a few bits of animation stuff at Umbard for all their social work as well.
I'm very
Amazing.
lucky.
The mission was great, by the way. I really enjoyed it.
Really
Oh,
good.
you
Yeah.
say it.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it got us all really pumped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's, I guess, start from the very start. Paul,
Yeah.
artwork. But in fact, Jordan, you're probably best place to ask this question. And how did this come about? How did the artwork come about? How did you and Paul meet? And how, we all know the iconic artwork that's kind of emblazoned on the side of the brewery and on the cans, and every single time, every year there's so many compliments. I love the artwork, it's amazing. And this year we went quite big, and we had lots of kind of feedback. But where did that all start?
As with most ideas, especially if Paul and I talk long enough, something ridiculous will come out of it.
Yeah.
I can't quite remember, and we did a video. They asked us a similar question: is where did the name Stoutzilla come? I thought it was you, Paul. I thought it was either you or Tom Lacey, our graphic designer and member of the team, of course.
I would love to take credit for it, but I don't think it was me.
Do you think it was Tom then?
I think it was Tom, yeah, because I don't remember coming up with that. I'm not sure, but I'm going to say it wasn't me.
So Tom Lacey, who's not here with us, Tom's been with us from day one. Tom designs the original Umbard logo. The concept of all our graphic design starts with Tom, and he does the majority of our work now in terms of our labels as well. So another lifelong friend with Paul and I. He was in Ghost of 1000, which was a hardcore band in Brighton as well. Moved to London, became really big time, and now we're very lucky that he does the labels for us. Yeah, I can't remember. So I can't take credit for me. I don't remember saying this needs to be called stout. I was like, it's a massive unctuous stout. This is the concept of the beer. So let's give Tom the credit, and then throw to Paul Jackson. It's going to be called Stoutzilla. Go.
Well, you know what? You put Zilla after any word, and I'm in. It sounds like a monster, and I love drawing monsters. I've been a pro artist for about 10 years now, and I specialize in drawing stupid stuff. A lot of skulls, a lot of monsters, a lot of weird stuff. So as soon as I was asked to draw Stoutzilla smashing up Brighton, I was like, yeah, I'll do that. Yeah, and obviously, I've grown up in Brighton. I've danced to Fandango around Brighton with Jordan for many years, and I'm super proud of where this company and especially this beer has gotten to. And you're actually all making me really homesick by talking about Brighton, how great it is, and especially Emma, your last paragraph. I was welling up over it. Anyway,
Come home.
Yeah, right. to make the art for Stoutzilla, and it's an obvious yes for multiple reasons, like I've just explained, but obviously Jordan's been a very close friend of mine for many years now. So yeah, and it was Stoutzilla, it's Godzilla, so it's a giant monster. It's smashing up Brighton, breathing fire, smashing up that disgusting eyesore 360.
We never liked it as locals.
Yeah, that in half straight away. But yeah, I love doing it. In fact, I managed to dig out. I've got the original artwork here, believe it or not.
Oh my god!
Yeah, here's
the original scrap.
Quite small. It's not the size of my head, but yeah.
Holy crap!
So this is the OG piece, and it's done on clay board, which is so it starts off as a white board, and you can add ink to it, and then you can scratch into the ink. So what I've done is I've obviously inked it, and then so these lightning bolts would have been scratched into that ink, and there's other versions of it. Where do I have one somewhere? Let me have a look. So there's the black version of it would be more like this. So this comes pre-inked. So this already has like a layer of black ink onto it, and then you just scratch into the ink to reveal the white. So this version is better because you have the opportunity to work both in black and white. So yeah, so this is the original, which I need to give to you guys at some point. You should hang it in the bar or something. But
It's amazing.
Going
yeah,
straight on eBay.
now it's in your book, Em. I'm going to wait a few years. You get it top 10, and then it's eBay. Off it goes. But yeah, obviously, it's a great privilege to be asked to do it, and then especially seeing how far it's come now. And you know, like myself and all Jordan's old friends are super proud of him. And yeah, I can't wait to see what the future holds for this and all the new stuff that you're doing that I will hopefully be a part of. You know.
There's a new Imperial Stout that Paul has agreed to do some amazing artwork for that may be another Titan.
Fantastic.
I'll leave that looming in the air.
You heard it here first. I like that.
Exclusive.
Amazing. And then so Luke, so obviously Paul's already done this amazing artwork. How did the animation come about? Because I mean, we'll talk a little bit about this year's national launch, but you know, essentially we created a little pack of assets for anyone who signed up to be a launch location. And we sent them this Brett made this amazing folder of images and things like that, and this video was included in it. And I was emailing all these launch locations and saying, here's your pack. By the way, there's a really cool video. If you've got a projector and a subwoofer, you can turn your bar into like some kind of weird and quite a few places I went to were I went to one pub in Reading. They were projecting it onto like a fabric kind of like awning or something like that. As you walked into the pub,
Oh, wow.
you saw Stoutzilla just kind of in the sky. It was amazing. But how did it come about? Because it was incredible.
Oh, that's really cool to hear it being used like that. That's great. But yeah, I mean, obviously Paul did like an amazing job with the illustration, so I was just trying to sort of bring it to life a bit more in the animation, I guess. And specifically for this one, I kind of wanted to bring it more into 3D to try and get that sense of like things being destroyed and really bring that sort of gritty, grungy vibe to it. So I've kind of got like lots of overlays over different elements to try and bring about that sort of artwork that Paul did. But yeah, it was kind of like taking that as inspiration and then trying to build it in a similar kind of world as to what Paul did. Without going too
Did you
far
make
away.
a model at any point, Luke? Because it looks like you've potentially built a set and digitalized it. Just from my ignorance, sorry, but how did you do that?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So yeah, it's basically I made a 3D scene that the Stoutzilla walks through.
I don't know what Godzilla is. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
I have no idea what that thing is. I never want to be sued, so I have no idea.
But yeah, so it kind of like walks through this scene, and then there's like lightning bolts and things exploding all over the place. And I've kind of got like I've used the Unbarred logo and the lightning bolt and brought that into 3D as well. Kind of brought that into the scene. It's kind of mixed between.
No, it was great, man. I really enjoyed it. It was great.
Oh, thank you.
This is a good question. This is a cool question. I mean, this is a question for you, Jordan. Well, I mean, I was going to talk about kind of, I guess, the variants that kind of came about. We've touched on the barrel age, but this is a brilliant question. Well, yeah, I mean, Jordan, you can answer that.
Yeah, no, brilliant question. And Matt, you actually drove this force as well of when you first started. It's like, I know there's residual sugars. What are you going to do with those? I know that's a very geeky comment to make. But basically with Stoutzilla, and any stout that you're trying to make as huge and unctuous as possible, you really want to take those first sugars from your mash, and your mash being all your grains going into the mash tun. That first section we take off, and we do that 3 or 4 times to be able to get one brew out of that. And the residual sugars left in there quite often just get sent down the drain. It's finished. They're spent grains. All our grains go to a local farm, so they go back into the food cycle, which is excellent. But we last year didn't have the space or the tanks to be able to do anything with it, or a plan. And I know this year, when Matt came on board, it's like, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? And quite rightly so. So the last runnings, we call it, which is the liquid left that didn't go to the kettle and didn't go to Stoutzilla, still has a huge amount of sugar and a huge amount of flavour. So we did keep pumping those back into a fermenter, which were nice and hot. So it was at pasteurized temperature, and we had to wait a couple of days until we got all of the mashes done for Stoutzilla. Unfortunately, it didn't go low enough in temperature that it started fermenting with any wild yeast. Sent that liquid, which we call wort, back into the kettle, and then we boiled it. So the flavor profile, I looked at a vast research of different styles that these grains would give a characteristic for, and beautifully ticked every single box of an old ale. So an old ale having some roastiness, a little bit of chocolate, not pitch black. It's got some darkness to it. And then adding loads of Lyle's Black Treacle specifically, which is an English version of molasses. So he added English molasses on top of this last runnings. So it's not super thick. We thought we were going to achieve like a 4%, maybe a 5% beer. But Stoutzilla takes just the premium, highest sugars possible. What ABV was it again, guys? It was like
6.3.
6.3. We could make a really strong beer with the leftovers. Going to tradition, this is a very common way of breweries that would brew a very large beer, and then the last run-ins would go to their equivalent of a table beer, maybe, or a low ABV beer, and they would achieve that from one mash. We did it over many mashes with a really huge imperial stout, and still achieved a really high ABV old ale, and we produced that only in casks. So you have to keep an eye out. I think probably the best tool is Untapped to see where people are pouring it. We've still got a lot of fantastic pubs that really respect cask, putting that beer in. It's another one, so dangerous to drink. You drink it thinking you're having a 4-5% beer. It's got like notes of dates. It's got raisiny notes, almost rum-like molassesy characters. So it's really this autumnal, wintry flavors that are really Moorish, but it's over 6% in cask. It's a beautiful, beautiful beer.
I think we were talking about Jordan, and we were kind of trying to find a word to describe it. We were like, kind of smells and tastes old, as in, in the way that we describe it. It kind of tastes like your your favorite pub. That really kind of
a dusty old pub,
school.
A boozer.
Yeah. I think we modified that for the blog. But
I think you nailed that nostalgia that it creates. It really does create that nostalgia.
It really did, and I can attest for the dangerous. I mean, I remember one of the launch locations had it on. I was at a hoppy place in Maidenhead, very excited to try it. On cask, poured through a sparkler in a dimple glass.
Oh,
I think I had 3 pints of it before I remembered how strong it was. Absolutely incredible. Emma, have you been lucky enough to give it a go?
I haven't, but it sounds absolutely amazing. I mean, it sounds incredible. I would love to try that.
You need to try some. We need to
Yeah,
get some.
definitely. I've not had enough of your cask ale.
I think
I want to ask a little bit about the label again. About it is a fantastic label, and as you said, you get loads of comments on it. How important are the labels to Unbarred? You know, now we've got cans where you've got this big canvas that you can work on. How much of a part of a beer is that?
Yeah, it really interesting. I was at Brewers Congress in London. I think where it is last week, and it was very interesting actually. A couple of really good speakers saying what we felt as brewers. One being Jamil Zainasheff, absolute legend who's inspired so many brewers, who owns a brewery in America, and Mark Tranter, who's down the road in Fell, who's absolute inspiration to many brewers in the UK as well. And both of them discussing the point of marketing versus beer. And there's two things I'll comment on. One is, as Unbarred, we've always wanted to represent creativity in the can and the design. So we've always worked with, and Paul, I still consider you a Brighton artist, although you're in Canada, and hopefully you'll come back sometime.
I will.
We have an abundance of incredible creativity in Brighton, and we want to reflect that. We only use local artists in the way we represent our beers. But there are also some times where you can get something that doesn't hit the point and it goes amiss. And going back to some of these speakers discussing what they call either FOMO beers or stunt beers that people are desperate to try. And it's very frustrating when you go, that's an awful beer. It's a really bad beer. But we're being sucked into the marketing of it. Hopefully, and I think from the feedback we're getting, Stoutzilla is probably the perfect example of a sweet spot where we've really pushed the boundaries of technical ability, and with the people we've got on board supporting us here, we've hit a sweet spot of marketing as well. And if, for example, right now we have a table beer that is getting wonderful reviews, but would you remember when Unbarred did that table beer, or if it had a specific name that you can associate that to? And there's so many wonderful beers that you'll remember because of that specific name. And going back to Siren, actually, and giving great credit to them, they've done some incredible lagers, and there's particularly an Italian Pilsner that I was blown away with. Technical brilliance. But it was just called Italian Pilsner, and no one will remember that moment, that Siren, or not many people will remember that. If it had a name and an image and a brand behind it, and they carried on forcing that, or pushing that, should I say, you really fall behind it and it sticks in your mind. And you get, with us, I think a lot of people, I get it myself, is that nostalgia of Stoutzilla's coming back, that excitement, the story around it, the people involved, that taste. It really does help and create that marketing moment. So yeah, can design and marketing are absolutely crucial. But in terms of how
you've hit the nail on the head there with branding. Essentially, branding is the key to anything, to extradite it into people's brains fast. Like you could have the best beer ever, but if you've got boring labeling, it will take much longer for that to spread because they actually have to get to the source of it faster. So if you've got great branding, that spreads way quicker. The thing is with Stoutzilla is that it's not over branded. And it's a great product, and it does exactly what it says it's going to do. Do you know what I mean? And that's, for me, is the perfect product. So yeah, it's also quite an extreme product in both senses. The art's a bit extreme and the product's a bit extreme, and it kind of works. But like you said, with like a table beer, it could be amazing, but it's got to stay. You've got to plant a seed somehow. you know. So that's the same. That's just the branding 101, really.
There's so many beers on a shelf nowadays. I think people buy with their eyes, don't they? So you
Absolutely.
you look at a shelf.
Yeah, you do.
You need beers that are going to pop off the shelf to your eyes, and you might pick up and not like the style of beer, or you might not be interested in what the hops are in it, but you've picked it up because you like the artwork. You've read the beer label. You put it back down, but you still, that's got in your mind. Equally,
it's like the same with wine now as well. A lot of wines are being a lot more creative with their labeling, and they're being a bit more sort of contemporary with it. And I find that for me, like, who knows nothing about wine, I'm always like, who's got the coolest label? There's a bear, so I'm going to drink that. You know, so I feel like it's becoming more and more important, but it can also work the other way, where like a bad product has got great packaging, like you say. So there's a way around that as well. So yeah, the tongue has to be the final judge, you know.
I mean, that animation, you know, got us all really pumped at the beginning, and luckily the beer carried it through, didn't it? There's something I thought about that animation that actually was, I don't know what I think about Stoutzilla. When I look at the can, I think, oh, he's really bad. Stoutzilla's really bad. He's ripping up Brighton. But actually, the animation made me really warm to him. There was some kind of misunderstood element of him.
Oh, well, there's a story.
A bit of a vulnerability to him. You know, the kind of red glowing eyes looking at us, and I was like,
he's not smashing up Brian. He's looking for his car keys, is what he's doing.
Yeah. Totally misunderstood. And the animation really brought that out, I think. And now when I look at the can, I have some sympathy for him as well. He's just a bit fed up. He's having a bad day. And you know,
if I had a tenner for every time I've left my car keys at the top of the I-360, then there's a really good question from Harman Brun here that I just want to quickly just in terms of the you know, the kind of the video. We've kind of spoken a lot, you know, kind of Brighton, and everyone's kind of been gushing over Brighton. But Luke, just quickly on that, because, you know, there's been a theme. What does it mean to you? You know, are you from Brighton originally? You know, and what's that influence had on you, but also kind of this video in the way that you kind of approach your craft, I guess.
Yeah, so I wasn't actually born and raised in Brighton. I actually grew up in a place called Worcester, which is kind of West Midlands kind of way. But for a long time, I always wanted to move down to Brighton because I always enjoyed visiting here. So eventually, when I did get the chance to move down here, it was, it's been great. And I think being in a place that is surrounded by so many creative people, I think it just inspires you to try new things and feel more comfortable kind of pushing boundaries in the sort of creative lane of what you're doing. And there's just never any sort of lack of inspiration, I guess. There's always people that you see kind of doing amazing things, and it's just a great place to be for that sort of creativity, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, Jordan, you probably agree that's kind of what is at the heart of Unbarred, and, you know, what you set out to do and what we're all doing now, right?
Absolutely. It's close to my heart. It's close to all of our hearts. Yeah, really important, and so fortunate we've got such amazing people around us. Absolutely.
Brilliant. Jordan, do you want to tackle this question that's right in front of our faces on the screen?
Yeah. Elephant in the room there, a massive message. No, we've just invested in a centrifuge, so we cannot fit a single more fermenter in the building. We couldn't possibly do it. The tap room would disappear, and we can't allow that to happen, because that's our community, and a hub. We never want to lose that, and then we have to grow our giant containers that live all around us with cold storage. We've squeezed every nook and cranny, and, you know, forgive us, when you do come in the tap room, you'll see cardboard boxes everywhere. We just have nowhere else to put them. and those boxes get filled with beer and get sent out to all the wonderful customers. So we are cracking at the seams. Absolutely, totally agree. The long-term journey and the mega passion list is going into more barrel aging and more mixed fermentation. There's a wonderful crossover, and I don't know if many people have tried what we call wild wines or natural wines. There's a lovely sweet spot between mixed fermented, which is different cultures of yeast into beer, and there's a wonderful world of unpasteurized, lovely natural wines. That is a sweet spot where they cross over, and sometimes you cannot tell the difference between one or the other. And we're getting to this lovely closeness there. I would love to be able to grow into that position, and I would love to be able to express what we could do with our local terroir, as they call it in wine, your local landscapes. And in Sussex, we do have a citrus farm, believe it or not. You know, there's so much we could potentially do. But as what we call a clean brewery, and barrel aging is clean barrel aging, that means that we don't have wild yeast, or we do everything we can to prevent wild yeast getting into our packaging. So on our current site, if it's barrel aged, it's usually high ABV in spirit used barrels, because the spirit's so high in alcohol that it's too toxic for wild yeasts to survive. And we can package that, and we can even package that through our canning line. And we did a barrel aged Belgian beer that we put in Trinidad rum barrels, Belgian quad, one of our fastest selling beers we've ever done.
That was so good.
Did you have some? Wonderful.
Oh my God, it was so good.
Everything works beautifully. It was just a magical moment where this molassesy character came through, and you could taste like this raisiny, vanilla-y notes through the wood as well. That's what we call clean barrels. What isn't clean, we consider, is wine barrels. So if we started to get a Cabernet, a red wine used barrel, it would have so much wild yeast in that. If we put it through our canning line, we would end up having to change every rubber gasket, every seal. And on our canning line, there's like over 800 rubber gaskets and seals. And then every beer that comes through that canning line afterwards potentially would have a wild yeast that would carry on fermenting, and then you get exploding cans. Many breweries that do mixed fermentation have two separate warehouses, one for the wild, funky, exciting stuff, and you have a separate canning line or a separate bottling line, and then one for what we call the clean. Due to the current climate, and one thing I did actually want to say was things are tough for all breweries, and I think we've all seen, if you're following what's happening for the craft breweries right now, due to many things such as COVID, the current war, the recession. If you think a craft brewery is charging too much money for that can, trust me, people are working day and night and trying their very best to make it work. It's not that easy right now. Many breweries are not making a clear profit. It's not a good time to invest into buying a giant mega brewery. For us, being completely open and honest, we're holding on. We are talking to local farmers who we've built a wonderful relationship with. And when the time's right, and hopefully next year, we're having forward conversations with building unbars with a local farm that we can use. Produce we're making from brewing, going back to cattle, back to the land, using water from wells. This is a wonderful, dream for us to grow into. But yeah, just to restate that we should all be supporting your local craft brewery, because it is bloody tough. So yeah, hopefully future is growing into that, but right now we just got to look after what we've got.
Yeah.
Amen.
Well said.
So I think we're coming up to the end of the night. So what we'll do is I just want to pop around the room, and just go. Just what was what do you love about Stoutzilla? I think just like a nice little kind of like a loving. Everyone say something lovely about Stoutzilla. Let's start with Jordan. Jordan, I know you're super passionate and you've spoken super passionately about Stoutzilla, but a few words and go for it.
I think I've touched on most of the points, and for me, from my wife supporting me to actually continue brewing in a shed and making it a career, to be one of the first bottles we brewed and have got aged and has developed into a moment where we can all sit and talk about it and show all our friends that we've grown on the way. Paul, I've got a wonderful video of you dancing on the mini bar we made in that shed, which I won't release right now. Don't worry, I'm not going to.
Come on.
Brighton's smallest bar that you could not stand on properly. But there's been some great times, and everything we've done with the journey of Bar has been done with full integrity. And for the moment of Stoutzilla, from that point to where we are today, for me, it's really emotional. I'm very proud of what we've done.
Paul, what does it mean to you to be part of the original legacy Stoutzilla?
Well, yeah, like Jordan just said, I was there back in the shed brewing days, and when he had a little bar in there, we used to have a few beers and have a little dance. So Stoutzilla to me is kind of like, it's a bit of a trophy these days of the accomplishments from coming from that tiny little room, and this sort of genesis of Jordan's mind. I think having the Stoutzilla with my art on it, I'm very proud to have my art on it and to have this trophy of where we are now. I think it's a very special thing. I mean, I'm not great with words, but yeah, I'm proud to be a part of it, and I'm proud of Jordan, and I think I that's sort of how I see it. Whenever I see it, I kind of warms my heart, knowing that it's still doing its thing, it's still making people happy. So yeah, I mean, it will always have a special place for me.
And Luke, I'm sure that video is going to live on in people's memories. I mean, I'm still pumped up from watching it well over an hour and a half ago. But I guess it's quite exciting to be involved, in the project for you.
Yeah, definitely, and it's been amazing to hear more about its backstory tonight. I'm sort of hearing from its beginnings to where it is now. It's just, it's amazing. So to be a part of it is. It's great. It's really cool to be a part of something that's come from very humble beginnings to being such a celebrated beer now.
And Brett, I guess the end of this live stream kind of officially marks the end of the marketing campaign for Stoutzilla. It's been exciting, but probably a bit of a sigh of relief as well.
It's been good, and that was going to be one of my things actually. Like, I think the humble beginnings is what's really cool about the beer, but also this year's release, which is probably, I would say, maybe the biggest thing kind of we've done as a group, or like as a brewery, like in terms of a launch and an event. It's probably the biggest, most successful thing we've probably pulled off altogether. And that for me is probably the most exciting thing about Stoutzilla, that it's gone from humble beginnings, being in 60 venues, multiple people sharing Luke's video around on social media or on projectors, several events in different places. But yeah, it's a nice way to bring the year to a close. Also nice that we now can, close the book on that for another year. We're stressed about it. We're stressed about it next year, but
absolutely.
Yeah.
and Emma, any kind of like last words from you on just what I guess Stoutzilla means to you and that.
Yeah, I think just hearing all these guys talk, their answers, the answers come from a place of the beer is there's a story there, isn't there? There's a love there because there's a story. And yes, we have banged on a lot about Brighton tonight, but you don't have to be from Brighton or have been there from the start in order to have your own stories about this beer. This beer will form people's stories who buy a couple for Christmas who've never had it before, and they'll have a wonderful time, open it after a meal or something, and find love or find friendship or whatever. It will become part of so many other people's stories, and it's so good to see the beer going from strength to strength, and to see to hear that how well it's done this year is incredible. It's just amazing and lovely to hear those stories being formed by people and going on to be something more and something else. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, thanks to everyone for, thanks to everyone who's been watching and kind of the comments, and I've been reading the comments as we've gone along. Thanks Emma for co-hosting and kind of helping us out with this.
Thank you for inviting me.
Luke, thanks for coming on, and and thanks to John as well, even though you're not on the screen. Brett, it's been fun.
Yeah, only one
relax now.
Good.
But ultimately, thanks to Jordan. Well, 2014 Jordan for brewing it and starting this office. It's been wild.
It's
cheers,
not
everyone.
one person
Thank you so much.
it's absolutely a community project in one sense, and very proud to be part of it. Thank
Amazing.
you.
Well, cheers, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Cheers.
Enjoy the rest of your day.
Congratulations on everything, and yes, Merry Christmas.
Enjoy your beer when it
very
gets
much.
there.
Cheers, guys. And thanks for everyone
Cheers.
who joined us as well tonight. Cheers.
Bye.
Cheers, guys. Love you all. Don't know how to